When I started Gray Media, my parents didn't care. My mom just said, focus on a real job. Years later, after I made Forbes 30 Under 30, she called and said, your brother needs $3,000 a month. I told her, so did I once. Okay, picture this. I'm standing under blinding stage lights, a professional smile glued to my face while 100 cameras flash, capturing the biggest moment of my life. This isn't just a media launch. This is the media launch, the dream I've chased since I was 12. But as my heart hammered against my ribs, all I could see were 5 empty seats in the VIP section, staring back like silent accusations. I'd reserved them anyway, written their names on little cards, Mom, Dad, Everest. A foolish, desperate hope that, maybe this time, it would be different. Miss Gray, a reporter called, cutting through the buzzing anticipation. Who inspired you to start your company? The question hung in the air, heavy and loaded. My throat tightened. I reached for the water glass, buying a precious second, struggling to compose myself as 200 industry professionals leaned forward, waiting. I set the glass down, my fingers trembling ever so slightly against the cool crystal. Maybe, I said, my voice softer than I intended, yet sharp with a truth I rarely spoke aloud. It came from knowing what it feels like to be forgotten. The room fell silent. Cameras clicked frantically, capturing the exact moment my carefully constructed facade cracked wide open. I didn't cry. I learned long ago that tears accomplished nothing in the Gray household. The memory surfaced unbidden, taking me back to when I was 12. I was cross-legged on my bedroom floor, a cheap, plastic toy microphone clutched in my hand. I'd saved 3 weeks of allowance for that thing, a cord that connected to absolutely nothing. But when I spoke into it, I imagined my voice traveling, reaching people who actually wanted to hear it. And in breaking news, I'd whispered to my audience of stuffed animals arranged in neat rows, Soraya. Gray reports that dreams come true if you work hard enough. Suddenly, a roar of cheering erupted from the living room downstairs, my father's booming voice cutting through the walls like a knife. Did you see that catch? That's my boy. That's a Gray man right there. Football highlights. Again. Everest's sophomore year game against Central High played on our TV at least twice a week. I pressed the microphone closer to my lips, raising my voice just a little, determined to finish my imaginary broadcast. Then, my bedroom door cracked open. My mom poked her head in, a finger pressed to her lips. Honey, could you quiet down? Your brother's highlights are on, and your father's trying to focus. I slowly lowered the microphone. But I was just. I know, sweetie. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Maybe later, okay? You know how important these game films are. The door closed with a soft, final click. Later never came. It never did in our house. Everest's games. Everest's trophies. Everest's future. These formed the very foundation of Gray family conversations. A son carries the Gray family name. Dad reminded me once when I dared to ask why he never came to my school speech competition. He'd ruffled my hair like I was still 5 instead of 14. Your brother's got real pressure on him, Soraya. You're the lucky one. Lucky. I rolled that word around in my memory now, standing on the stage, 6 years after college, watching the reporter scribble down my quote about being forgotten. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. I learned to record in whispers after that day, to dream quietly, to speak softly into that toy microphone long after it broke. The plastic cracked, but my initials, SG, still carved into the side. I'd imagine listeners somewhere, leaning in close because they wanted to hear what Soraya Gray had to say. If I achieved enough, they would notice. If I became exceptional enough, even the Gray household would have to acknowledge me. I believed this with the fervent faith of a child, then a teenager, then a young woman. Understanding their dismissal meant it hurt less, I told myself. Being the daughter who understood while Everest demanded became my identity, my lonely cross to bear. Senior year of high school, I sat at our kitchen table, college brochures spread before me. Northwestern's prestigious journalism program circled in red. Dad, I'd said, my voice full of cautious hope. I want to apply here. They have the best broadcasting program in the country. He barely glanced up from his coffee. That won't put food on the table, sweetheart. What about something practical? Business, maybe. Your father's right, Mom added, patting my hand. Those communication degrees are, well, they're hobbies, really. Maybe something more practical, honey. I applied anyway. Got accepted with a partial scholarship. Then I watched my parents drive Everest to Arizona State for his full-ride football orientation, boxes packed, everything shiny and new. We'll contribute what we can, Dad had told him, but with your scholarship, you shouldn't need much. My partial scholarship, though, left a $20,000 gap. When I showed them the numbers, Dad's face clouded. That's a lot of money for a degree that might not lead anywhere. Soraya. I ended up at community college, working night shifts at the campus coffee shop, recording my first podcast on equipment I bought piece by piece from pawn shops. That night after registration, I sat on my bed and whispered into my new secondhand microphone, testing the sound levels. My voice was stronger than it had been at 12. Less hopeful, perhaps, but infinitely more determined. If no one will listen to me, I said to the empty room, I'll find those who will. 6 years and 50 million monthly listeners later, I stood on that stage, scanning those empty seats one last time before continuing my launch speech. The words formed in my throat, solid and sure, rising from that whisper in my childhood bedroom to fill the crowded ballroom. They didn't come, but everyone else did. That night, the steam rose from the industrial espresso machine as I pulled another shot, my third double of the night. The clock above the counter read 2:17 a.m. 3 more hours before I could lock up the grind and shuffle home to edit tonight's podcast episode. Another all-nighter, Gray? Marissa, the owner, leaned against the counter, counting the day's tips. Her gray hair caught the low light as she divided the bills into neat stacks. 500,000 listeners don't record themselves. The pride in my voice still felt strange. Foreign, like clothing I hadn't broken in yet. Marissa whistled low. 500,000, huh? Your folks must be busting buttons. My hands froze over the portafilter. They don't actually know. What do you mean they don't know? 500,000 people listen to your voice every week and your own parents aren't among them. I shrugged, tamping the coffee grounds with practiced precision. They're busy. Everest's senior season at Arizona State. Every weekend, they drive 3 hours to Phoenix for his games. What I didn't tell her, they'd visited my apartment exactly once in 2 years. Dad spent 20 minutes examining my building's security features, while Mom fussed over the milk in my refrigerator. They declined my offer to show them my makeshift studio in the spare bedroom, just a closet with foam panels stapled to the walls and a microphone stand I assembled from hardware. Store parts. Last week, I sent them the link to the episode that hit the charts. I concentrated on the coffee dripping into the cup. Mom texted back, "That's nice, honey," 3 days later. No indication she'd listened. Marissa's hand settled on my shoulder. Their lost kid. The bell above the door jingled as a customer entered. The conversation ended there, but her words lingered in my mind as I finished my shift. 3 weeks later, I was driving the family sedan along the familiar route to my childhood home for Thanksgiving. Desert stretched on both sides of the highway, the November chill barely touching the Arizona landscape. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel as a billboard for Arizona State football appeared, my brother's number 84 prominently displayed. The gray family driveway was crowded with cars when I arrived. Extended family already. Inside, the scent of turkey and sage greeting me as I pushed open the front door with my overnight bag. There she is. Uncle Richard boomed from the living room. The career gal. Still doing that little radio thing. Podcast, I corrected automatically. And yes, Dad appeared from the kitchen, beer in hand, clapping me on the shoulder. She's got a few Listeners now. Hobbies taking off a bit, isn't it, Soraya? A few listeners. Last week, 513,942 downloads in a single day. Where's Mom? I asked, setting my bag down. Upstairs. Go say hello. I climbed the familiar stairs, passing framed photos of Everest in various football poses. Through the years. My own graduation photo hung at the end, smaller, tilted slightly, as if hung as an afterthought. I pushed open my bedroom door and stopped cold. The room was unrecognizable. My twin bed gone, replaced by glass display cases filled with trophies. Shelves lined the walls, holding footballs with signatures and game dates. Framed newspaper clippings covered the space. Where my bookshelf once stood, my mother stood in the center, dusting a particularly large trophy. Mom? She turned, startled. Oh, Soraya, honey. I didn't hear you come in. Her eyes flicked nervously around the room. We've been meaning to tell you. With Everest possibly going pro, we needed someplace to display all his accomplishments properly. My throat tightened. Where's my stuff? In the garage, boxed up nice and neat. She brushed her hands on her apron. We figured. Since you've got your own place now. I scanned the walls for any trace of me. The spelling bee. Certificates. My high school journalism awards. The framed cover of the university papers issue. I'd edited. Nothing remained. You could have asked. My voice was barely a whisper. Well, you're never home. Always working at that coffee shop. Always recording your little stories. She patted my arm. Come help with the stuffing. Everyone's waiting. Downstairs, Everest held court in the living room, regaling cousins with tales of college glory. He barely acknowledged my presence with a nod before continuing his story about a game-winning catch. Later, as we gathered around the dining table, Dad raised his glass. 2. Everest, with NFL scouts watching his every move. Soon we'll have a real gray legacy to be proud of. Glasses clinked. My water glass remained on the table untouched. After dinner, I escaped to the garage, finding cardboard boxes labeled Soraya stacked haphazardly beside old paint cans. I dug through one, finding my childhood journals and carefully preserved awards, now creased and bent. My phone buzzed in my pocket. An email from Western Media Group, the podcast network that had been courting me for months. They were ready to offer a distribution deal that would expand my reach exponentially. The catch? They needed financial references and a cosigner for the office space lease. I returned to the house, finding Dad alone in the kitchen. Dad, I need to talk to you about something. He looked up from loading the dishwasher. Make it quick. Highlights coming on. I explained the opportunity, the biggest of my career, and the requirement for a financial reference. His expression darkened with each word. So, you want me to stake my credit on this podcast thing? Soraya, those internet radio shows are just hobbies. What happens when this falls through and I'm on the hook? It won't fall through. I have 500,000 listeners. This is my chance to. Your brother has NFL scouts at every game. That's real opportunity. This internet stuff. He shook his head, dismissing me entirely. It's not stable. My hands curled into fists at my sides. I'm asking for a signature, not money. And I'm saying no. When you have a real job with real prospects, then we can talk. He turned away, conversation over. That night, in my old bedroom, now transformed into a shrine to my brother, I sat cross-legged on the floor between display cases. I recorded a raw, unfiltered episode on my phone that I never intended to publish. This is what invisibility sounds like, I whispered into the microphone. This is what it feels like when the people who should see you most clearly don't see you at all. Tears slid down my cheeks, but my voice remained steady, a fragile steel. They're never going to see me unless I force them to look. In my apartment the next night, I methodically removed family photos from my desk, placing them in a drawer. I signed the Western Media contract with only my name on the dotted line, betting everything on my own signature. Professor Williams from the community college called the following week, having heard about my contract. I knew you had something special, she said. Your voice has always carried truth. Marissa offered the coffee shop's back room for recording. After hours, rent-free until you get on your feet. Trent Daniels, a tech entrepreneur who discovered my podcast through a friend, emailed about investing in my vision for a network of female-focused shows. Your authenticity is rare, he wrote. I want to help amplify it. The night I signed my first major advertising deal alone, I sat in my apartment surrounded by contracts, my name the only signature on every page. The broken toy microphone from my childhood sat on my desk, a physical reminder of the whispers that became shouts. For the first time, I didn't feel the crushing weight of my family's indifference. I breathed fully, deeply, freely. They may never see me, but everyone else will. A week later, champagne glasses clinked around my parents' dining table, a sound that had followed every major Gray family announcement since I was old enough to remember. Dad stood, his chest puffed with pride, gripping his glass as if it might float away with all his excitement. To Everest, he announced, his voice booming across the room. Finally, a Gray making headlines. NFL tryouts next month, can you believe it? 28 pairs of eyes turned toward my brother, who beamed with practiced humility. Mom dabbed at tears while Uncle Frank clapped Everest on the back so hard his wine sloshed dangerously close to Grandma's lace tablecloth. I smiled and nodded, my own glass barely touched. Nobody noticed my phone vibrating in my pocket. It was my producer, with news that my podcast had just hit 1 million monthly listeners. The milestone I'd worked toward for years arrived in the exact same moment everyone toasted my brother's potential career. Later, Mom found me in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher while everyone fawned over Everest's college highlight reel in the living room. Honey, she said, placing a stack of dessert plates beside me, would you mind not mentioning your work tonight? Your brother needs this spotlight right now. The scouts are still on the fence. I arranged the silverware with mechanical precision. When exactly is my turn for the spotlight, Mom? She sighed, the sound of a woman who had mastered the art of gentle dismissal. You know how your father feels about real careers versus hobbies. The words stung like a slap across my face. 1 million listeners. $200,000 in advertising revenue last quarter. A hobby. Right, I said, the word clipped and cold. Aunt Patty cornered me before dessert, her bifocals slipping down her nose as she peered at me. How's your little radio show going, dear? Podcast, I corrected her, the same way I had 6 times before. And it's going well. We just hit. Did you hear Everest might sign with the Cowboys? She interrupted, already turning toward the living room. Your father's beside himself. 2 weeks later, I stood in my apartment, staring at the press release draft on my laptop. Gray Media. My own company at 24. 5 shows under my production umbrella, studio space. Leased in downtown LA, and 15 employees counting on me. The launch event was set for next Thursday at the Westbrook Hotel. 300 industry professionals had RSVP'd. I needed my parents there, not for financial backing, not anymore, but because some childish part of me still believed they'd finally see me. I typed the email with shaking fingers. Mom and Dad, I'm launching Gray Media next Thursday at 7 p.m., Westbrook Hotel Ballroom. It's the most important day of my life. Please come. Love, Soraya. I checked my phone hourly for 6 days. The morning of the launch, a text finally arrived. Sorry, honey. Everest's playoff game tonight. Your father says to tell you good luck with your thing. Love you. I read it 3 times before setting my phone face down on the bathroom counter. The mirror reflected a woman in a tailored gray suit, eyes bright with unshed tears. I blinked them back, applied another coat of mascara, and practiced my speech again. The ballroom glittered with industry elites when I took the stage that evening. 5 empty chairs stared back from the front row, each bearing a small reserved card with a name: Mom, Dad, Everest, Aunt Patty, Uncle Frank. I swallowed hard as the spotlight found me. Thank you all for coming tonight, I began, my voice steadier than my heartbeat. Gray Media represents a new vision for digital storytelling. The speech flowed easily until a reporter from the LA Times raised his hand during the Q&A. "Miss Gray," he asked, "who inspired you to start your company?" The question hit like a punch to the sternum. I glanced at those empty chairs, then back at the waiting crowd. "Maybe," I said softly, the truth spilling out. "It came from knowing what it feels like to be forgotten." A hush fell over the room. Cameras clicked frantically. I saw recognition in the eyes of the women watching me, daughters who understood what it meant to be overlooked. My phone rang at 11:42 that night as I kicked off my heels in my hotel room. Dad's number flashed on the screen. "Are you trying to embarrass us?" His voice thundered through the speaker. Without greeting, "Your little comment is all over Twitter. Your brother's teammates are asking questions." "Which comment, Dad?" My voice remained steady, surprising me. "That nonsense about being forgotten, like we haven't supported you your whole life." I sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted by the weight of pretending. "If you feel embarrassed, maybe there's a reason. You think anyone cares about your little shows?" His voice turned utterly dismissive. "This isn't football, Soraya. This isn't real." "Millions do," I replied, the truth straightening my spine, filling me with a quiet power. "Just not you." The line went silent for 3 heartbeats. "Your mother's upset," he said finally. By morning, the clip had gone viral. "Female entrepreneur speaks truth about family dynamics," read one headline. My inbox flooded with messages from women sharing similar stories. My business partners gathered in my office the following Monday, concern etched on their faces. "The board is worried about the personal angle," Mark began, but Lucia cut him off. "They're wrong," she said firmly. "Your honesty is your strongest asset, Soraya. The numbers prove it." She was right. Subscriber counts had doubled overnight. 3 major platforms had reached out with partnership offers. The Women's Media Alliance wanted me to keynote their conference. For the first time, I understood the power in my voice, not despite being forgotten, but because of it. 6 months later, I stood in my apartment, staring at the Forbes magazine on my coffee table. 30 Under 30 blazed across the cover. My photo took up a quarter of page 18. "Self-made media entrepreneur Soraya Gray revolutionizes podcasting," read the caption beneath a shot of me alone in my downtown LA apartment, surrounded by recording equipment. My phone chimed with an email notification from dgray@hotmail.com. Subject: "We saw your interview with Terry Gross." My heart stuttered as I opened it. "Soraya, your mother and I listened to your Fresh Air interview yesterday. You spoke well. We're proud to see a Gray making such an impression in the business world." Warmth bloomed in my chest. Finally, after all these years, they see me. Then I read the last paragraph. "On a personal note, Everest is going through a tough time after being cut from training camp. His son's private school tuition is due, and he could use some support, about $3,000 monthly, until he lands on his feet. Since you're doing so well now, family should help family, right?" The warmth collapsed into a cold, hard knot. I closed the email without replying and turned the magazine face down on the table. Some things never change, but I had. The email from my father glowed on my laptop screen at 2 a.m., its timestamp mocking me. 3 years of silence broken by 23 carefully crafted sentences about family pride, punctuated by a request for $3,000 monthly payments to support Everest. I traced my finger over the screen, feeling nothing but the cool glass beneath my fingertip. The apartment sat quiet. Around me, my space, bought with my success. No football trophies here. Just awards they never acknowledged and books they never believed I'd write. "We're so proud of what you've accomplished," my father wrote. Proud. The word sat bitter on my tongue like old coffee. 30 seconds on Google would have shown them my accomplishments years ago, but they waited until Everest needed money. I typed my response slowly, weighing each word like currency. Polite acknowledgement of their newfound interest. Brief updates on my upcoming projects. Nothing about money. I signed off with, "I'm building something that matters." Instead of "love," the cursor hovered over send. One deep breath. Click. Within hours, his response arrived, less polished this time. Did you see the part about Everest's situation? 2 more emails followed that evening. 5 the next day. Each one less measured than the last. Desperation seeping through digital cracks. I answered none of them. A week passed. The receptionist's voice crackled through my office intercom. Miss Gray? Your brother is here. My stomach tightened. I stood, smoothing my charcoal pencil skirt with damp palms. Send him in. Everest filled the doorway of my corner office, still carrying himself like the star quarterback. His designer jacket hung loose around shoulders that once bulldozed defensive linemen. His eyes narrowed when he spotted the view of downtown Los Angeles behind me. Nice digs, he said without a smile. Must be nice. What can I do for you, Everest? I gestured toward the chair across from my desk, but he remained standing. Dad's emails. He began, his voice edged with accusation. You've been ignoring them. I responded to his first one. Not about what matters. He paced 3 steps, stopping at my bookshelf where my first microphone sat in a glass case. You know, I lost my coaching position. The office beyond my glass walls had gone quiet. My team pretended not to watch, but I felt their attention like a physical presence. I heard. My voice was flat. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't pay bills. His voice rose. You've got millions of listeners while my son eats instant noodles. What kind of aunt does that make you? The word aunt landed like a slap. Everest had a 9-year-old I'd met exactly twice. Both times, he was too busy talking football with Dad to introduce us properly. You haven't called me his aunt since he was born. The words escaped before I could catch them. This isn't about that. He slammed his palm against my desk. This is about family. About helping each other when times get tough. When times got tough for me, where were you? My voice remained even, practiced, honed by years of silencing my own pain. When I worked night shifts for college. When I launched Gray Media alone. That's different. How? It just is. You're he faltered. Girl. I finished for him, the word biting. Just the daughter? Heads turned in the office. Beyond. I'd raised my voice without meaning to. This isn't how I planned this conversation. I took a breath, centering myself. Everest, I built this company while you got full scholarships and NFL tryouts, while Mom and Dad attended every game and missed every milestone in my life. I stood straighter, meeting his gaze. You can apologize, Everest, but don't turn me into your emotional ATM. His face reddened. You've always been jealous. No, I said, my voice cutting through his accusation. I've always been invisible. I walked to the door, opening it. We're done here. That evening, notifications flooded my phone. Everest's Instagram post about selfish sisters who forget where they came from had gathered steam. My father's number appeared on my screen 7 times. I let each call roll to voicemail. My mother's message arrived just before midnight. Soraya, honey. Family takes care of family. Your father and I gave you everything we could. Her voice cracked. Everest needs your help. He's family. I pressed delete. By morning, the damage control attempts had begun. A producer I once met at a conference called, mentioning my father had reached out about potential family concerns that might impact my work. 2 advertisers received similar contacts. My father had dredged up every loose connection to the media industry he could find. My team assembled in the conference room without being asked. Loyalty burned in their eyes like banked fires. They're trying to pressure you through business channels, my head of operations said, sliding a printed list across the table. These are all the inquiries we've received. How do you want us to handle it? My assistant's pen hovered above her notebook. I studied their faces. These people who chose me, who saw my value without blood ties. Tell them all the same thing, I said, my voice firm. Gray media speaks for itself. Period. My mentor called from New York that afternoon. Your brother's quite vocal online. Need anything? Just your continued support. You've always had that. He paused. You know you're doing the right thing, right? Boundaries matter. The validation wrapped around me like a shield. Thank you. The office intercom buzzed again 3 days later. Miss Gray, your mother is on line 1. My finger trembled as it hovered over the button. I pressed it. Mom? Soraya. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. I wanted to call you myself, not through your father. That's a first. She sighed. I'm sorry we missed your launch. I should have been there. The apology hung between us, unexpected and incomplete. I waited. Your father doesn't know I'm calling. She cleared her throat. Everest is angry you won't help. And you? I'm trying to understand. A long pause. The things you said in that interview. About being forgotten. Was it really that bad? The question stunned me. 30 years of invisibility, and she asked if it was that bad. Do you remember when I was 12 and you told me to be quiet because Dad and Everest were watching football highlights? That's just one time, Soraya. It was every time. Silence stretched across the line. When she spoke again, her voice had hardened. We did our best. Your best was reserved for Everest. I breathed through the tightness in my chest. I have a meeting now, Mom. Am I dismissed? After I hung up, my assistant knocked softly. Your cousin Becky called. She said your uncle is asking questions about what really happened. The perfect gray family facade began to crack. Tiny fissures spreading outward from the pressure point of truth. That night, I stood at my apartment window overlooking the city lights. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. This isn't how Grays behave. I typed back the only response that mattered. Then I'll be a Gray on my own terms. I blocked his number before the message delivered. Then my mother's. Then Everest's. One by one, I closed the digital doors. They only opened when they wanted something from me. The silence that followed felt nothing like emptiness. It sounded exactly like freedom. The email arrived at 2:17 a.m. a week later. My computer screen illuminated the darkness of my bedroom like a beacon, drawing me from the edge of sleep. Dad's name appeared in bold text, followed by the subject line, your nephew misses his aunt. I stared at the ceiling, counting my breaths. 1 Mississippi. 2 Mississippi. My therapist calls this a grounding technique. I call it surviving my family. When my pulse steadied, I opened the message. Soraya, your mother and I were hoping you might join us for dinner next Sunday. Everest is going through a rough patch with the divorce. His son asks about you. Don't you think you should set a good example as his aunt? Family takes care of family. You remember how we sacrificed for you. The laugh that escaped me sounded foreign in the quiet apartment. Sacrificed. As if letting me attend community college while buying Everest a new car was some heroic act of parental devotion. I didn't reply. 3 more emails arrived by morning. Mother's plea mentioned our little boy struggling, conveniently forgetting Everest was 31. Dad's follow-up reminded me that Gray family values included supporting each other. The final one, from Everest himself, contained a photo of his son holding a football with the caption, he wants to meet his successful aunt. The manipulation was so transparent it should have been laughable. Instead, it squeezed my chest like a vice. My phone rang during the morning production meeting. Terry Jennings, my top interviewer, raised an eyebrow as I silenced it. Family again, she asked when the others left. They've discovered I have money. I shuffled my notes, avoiding her gaze. You know, that interview you did last week about family estrangement is trending. People connect with your story. Terry's voice softened. The press is asking questions about your support system. The industry rumors have already started. 3 separate journalists had emailed questions about why my family never appeared at my events. A profile writer asked point-blank about the untold story behind Gray media. I could tell the truth, I said, the words tasting like possibility. I could tell everyone exactly who they are. Terry touched my arm. You could, but is that the voice you want the world to hear? The question followed me home that evening. My apartment, the one I bought without a co-signer, without family help, felt different tonight. Less like a sanctuary and more like a war room. On my desk sat the planner for next week's recording schedule. Tomorrow's slot remained conspicuously empty, reserved for special content. The next evening, I powered up my microphone. The red recording light blinked, patient and waiting. Unlike my family, it had always been there when I needed it. This is a special episode, I began, my voice steadier than my hands. Names and identifying details have been changed to protect privacy. I paused, considering what came next. The temptation to name them burned like acid in my throat, to finally force them to face what they've done. To let millions hear how the great William Gray and his athletic prodigy son treated the daughter who dared to succeed on her own terms. But that would make me exactly what they claimed. Bitter. Ungrateful. Today, I want to talk about what it means to be the daughter who was always loved last. My voice dropped to just above a whisper. The one who learned to dream in silence because her voice wasn't worth hearing. For the next hour, I spoke without notes. About the 12-year-old girl with a toy microphone. About college applications and converted bedrooms. About launch events with empty seats. Never once did I say my father or my brother. Instead, they became a parent who couldn't see past gender expectations and a sibling raised to believe the world owed him everything. The power lay in what remained unsaid. In the story itself, achingly familiar to countless women who recognized the pattern. When I finished, I sat in silence for several minutes before pressing publish. The file uploaded to our server with a simple title, The Voice They Ignored. By morning, it had 1 million downloads. By evening, 5 million. Within 48 hours, 10 million people had heard my story without hearing my family's names. The first call came from Dad at work, his voice trembling with barely contained fury. "Take it down," he demanded. "People know you're talking about us." Am I? I kept my tone conversational, almost amused. I never mentioned anyone by name. Everyone will assume. Only if it sounds familiar, Dad. The word felt strange in my mouth. Formal and distant. Only if it sounds like something you'd do. He hung up. Mother tried next. Tears evident in her wobbling voice. "We've always loved you, Soraya." "How could you say such hurtful things?" "I didn't say they were about you, Mom." Her silence confirmed everything. Everest texted a single line. Real family wouldn't air dirty laundry. I didn't respond to any of them. Within days, national media picked up the story. The untold truth behind Gray Media's founder read one headline. America's Forgotten Daughters Speak Out, declared another. My inbox filled with thousands of letters from women sharing identical stories of invisibility within their own families. Industry colleagues sent quiet messages of support. My staff worked with renewed purpose, understanding now the mission behind our network's commitment to amplifying silenced voices. Later, I sat at my desk reviewing the week's analytics. The episode had become our most downloaded content ever. Comments flooded our website, each one a variation on the same theme. I thought I was the only one. A notification appeared on my screen. My brother had posted on social media a lengthy screed about ungrateful siblings and the importance of family loyalty. I closed the tab without reading past the first sentence. His words no longer mattered. Instead, I opened a blank document and began typing a response to one particular email from a 16-year-old girl who wrote, "How do I find my voice when no one in my family wants to hear it?" My answer flowed easily now. Not from bitterness or revenge, but from the quiet certainty of someone who finally understood her own worth. "Start by whispering," I wrote. "Then speak a little louder each day. The right people will listen, even if they aren't the ones you were born to." I signed my name and pressed send, feeling the last chains of obligation fall away. The family who ignored my voice for 28 years can now listen with the rest of the world, or not at all. For the first time in my life, their choice doesn't matter anymore. The morning light filters through my apartment windows, casting a golden glow across the wall. of awards. 3 years since that viral press conference. 3 years since I blocked their numbers. I trace my fingers across the spines of books lining my shelves, treasures I've collected. One by one, each a small rebellion against the childhood home where football trophies were the only achievements worth displaying. My downtown LA apartment hums with quiet contentment, a sanctuary built entirely on my terms. Gray Media occupies the top floor of a glass building 6 blocks from here. 15 shows now. 50 million monthly downloads. Numbers that should matter. Yet what strikes me most this morning is the silence, how comfortable it feels after years of striving to be heard. A notification pings. An unfamiliar email address. I almost swipe it away until the subject line catches me, from Everest's son. My coffee cup freezes halfway to my lips. I haven't heard that name spoken aloud in my home for years. Dear Aunt Soraya, the message begins. I'm Tyler. I'm 12 now. I listened to your podcast about invisible daughters. I think I understand why you don't talk to my dad anymore. Our family treated you badly. I want to be different. Could we meet? Just us. My thumb hovers over delete. The gray family pattern. Reach out only when they need something. But he's 12. Just a boy. I suggest a coffee shop near my office. Public. Brief. Controlled. 2 days later, he sits across from me. All gangly limbs and uncertain smiles. Everest's jawline, but softer eyes. He clutches a small box wrapped in what looks like Sunday comics. Dad doesn't know I'm here, he says, pushing the package toward me. Mom helped me find this. She said you might want it back. The paper crinkles beneath my fingers. Inside rests a small plastic microphone, cracked along one side, yellowed tape holding it together. My initials, SG, carved into the base with a safety pin during a particularly boring Sunday when everyone else watched football. Where did you find this? My voice catches, thick with unshed tears. Mom found it in Grandpa's garage when they were cleaning. She said it was yours. 20 years collapse. I'm 12 again, whispering stories into this worthless plastic toy, believing someone somewhere would want to hear them. I listened to all your shows, Tyler says, fidgeting with his straw. The one about invisible daughters made me cry. Dad never talks about you. But sometimes I hear him and Grandpa arguing about you when they think I'm playing video games. Something breaks loose inside me. For the first time in years, tears blur my vision. Thank you for bringing this. The words barely squeeze past the tightness in my throat. Could I ask you something? Tyler leans forward. How did you know your voice mattered when nobody listened? The question strikes with such familiar precision that I know instantly this boy carries the gray family curse of invisibility. Not the golden child. The watcher. The quiet one. I reach across the table, squeezing his hand. I didn't know if it mattered. I just knew I'd disappear completely if I didn't use it. Dad says I should play football, but I'd rather write stories. A confession delivered in a rush, eyes darting to gauge my reaction. You don't have to be like anyone else, Tyler, I tell him. Just listen. And tell the truth. That's all any voice really needs. His smile breaks like sunrise. Could I learn to record them? Someday? Like you did. When you're ready, I promise. I'll teach you. Later that evening, I place the broken microphone on my shelf between my Peabody Award and the Forbes magazine feature. The contrast jolts me, plastic toy beside crystal trophy. Beginning and culmination. I press record on my personal journal, the one show no one else will ever hear. Not every wound needs an apology to heal, I whisper, cradling the microphone in my palm. Sometimes the greatest freedom comes from realizing how strong the silence made you. I pause, remembering Tyler's earnest face. And sometimes healing arrives through the ones who watched and chose to be better. My phone chimes with a voice message from a number I don't recognize. I started recording my own stories, Aunt Soraya. Tyler's voice, clear and hopeful. I smile as I listen. The cycle breaks, not with a shout, but a whisper.